Uncover 3 spine-chilling true end of summer tales of haunted secrets and sinister shadows. The cabin had always been a haven, a place where laughter echoed off the water's surface, but this year felt different. As Jim led his family toward their lakeside escape, that familiarity felt tainted, shadowed by an unsettling sense of foreboding. The once clear waters now mirrored an ominous, dark hue that seemed to pulse under the dying sun. With summer's end looming, Jim felt a chill creep up his spine, a sensation that something dreadful lurked just below the surface. As they unloaded the car, Ben spotted something near the porch, strange footprints, enormous and deep, like something out of a horror movie. "That's weird," he said, eyes wide with curiosity and fear. Jim could only nod, a knot tightening in his stomach. But even the kids' unease couldn't overshadow the excitement of winding down summer. While digging through the cabin's dusty corners, Jim found a loose floorboard. He pulled it up with a grunt and unearthed an old box, its contents hidden away for years. Inside lay a stack of yellowed letters, faint ink barely legible. Each letter told a story of visitors who had mysteriously vanished, their last remnants swallowed by the murky lake. With each tale, Jim felt a growing dread, his pulse quickening. "These can't be real," he muttered, though a shadow of doubt crept in. He shared his find with Sarah, whose laughter fluttered like the wind through the trees. "Just folklore, babe," she said, brushing it off. But the kids exchanged nervous glances, feeling the weight of eyes watching them from the tree-line. The atmosphere thickened. The rustling leaves whispered secrets, and just as the sun dipped below the horizon, an eerie hush fell. Then came the night, dark, heavy, and pressing. Jim tossed and turned, sweat prickling his brow at the memory of the letters. Shadows crept into every crevice of his mind. The faint whisper of wind became a taunt, a melody beckoning him outside, where reality twisted into a nightmarish tapestry. Sarah's gaze drifted outside. Their neighbor, the retired sheriff, hovered nearby, obliviously trimming a hedge. His interest in the family felt predatory, not protective. Was he hiding something? A shiver danced along Jim's spine, and he shook off the thought, trying to find hope in the seemingly mundane. However, with another glance, the sheriff met his gaze, eyes cold and inscrutable, deepening the unease that knotted Jim's gut. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Determined to confront whatever darkness surrounded their family, Jim stepped outside, armed only with his flashlight and gnawing terror. The woods felt alien, rustling with secrets and dread, and the sound of the water transformed into a haunting chorus. What was watching him? He edged closer to the tree-line, fear clawing at his chest. Each step felt deliberate, as if he were walking on the bones of those who had come before him. Suddenly, whispers crescendoed. The ghostly murmurs wrapped around him, winding tight like an unyielding vine. He stumbled, breath caught in his throat. The stories in the letters danced through his mind like malicious shadows. Then, he realized too late the terror wasn't just in the woods, it had seeped into his blood, into his family. They were not alone, and as he turned to flee, those shadows stretched closer, reaching for him. Had they come to claim another name lost to the lake's grim ledger? Jim's heartbeat thundered in his ears as he spun around, desperation coursing through him. The flashlight beam wavered and danced, scattering shadows like frightened animals across the trees. The whispers had quieted, turning into an unsettling silence that felt heavy enough to smother him. He could still sense the presence lurking just beyond the light, a palpable tension, waiting for him to lose his grip on sanity. Sarah. Kids. He rasped, voice trembling as he called back toward the cabin. He felt something shift behind him, a rustle that wasn't just the wind, a distinct sound that pierced through his dread. Panic propelled him forward, pushing him into a reckless sprint toward the safety of the cabin. The flashlight flickered ominously, illuminating fleeting glimpses of things in the shadows. Twisted branches that resembled grasping hands. Muffled cries echoing through the woods that he felt the air thickening as he charged through the threshold. The cabin door slammed behind him with a shuddering bang, sealing him inside. The silence was deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. He leaned against the door, chest heaving, adrenaline still surging through him. What the hell is happening? His voice cracked. Ben and Emily stared up at him, eyes wide and glistening with fear. Sarah came rushing from the kitchen, a spatula still in her hand, confusion written all over her face. "Jim, what's wrong? There's something out there." "I felt it, Sarah. I heard whispers." He fumbled for the box of letters on the table, slapping it down in front of them. "These. They talked about people disappearing. We need to leave." The kids glanced nervously at Sarah, their excitement for the trip now overshadowed by a thick, suffocating dread. "It's just stories, Dad," Ben protested, but doubt crept into his voice. Sarah gently laid her hand on Jim's arm. "Calm down. We can't just pack up and leave in the dead of night. It's probably nothing," but Jim couldn't shake the feeling gnawing at him. He needed answers. The shadows. The footprints. The stories in the letters that filled his thoughts like ink bleeding into water. "Nothing? You think this is nothing?" He almost shouted, his sense of reality twisting further. "We've been drawn here by something malevolent." Just then, a low growl rumbled outside, reverberating through the wooden walls of the cabin. They froze, eyes wide. The sound pulsed with a primal threat, and for a moment, no one breathed. It wasn't an animal they all instinctively knew. Suddenly, the lights flickered sharply, plunging the room into darkness. Heart racing, Jim scrambled for the flashlight, but it had flickered out completely. Emily clutched her brother's arm, tremors of fear running through her. "Dad, I don't like this," she whispered, squeezing her eyes shut. "It will be okay," Sarah said, but her voice was uncertain as she fumbled for her phone, its screen illuminating a sliver of the room. Jim could barely hear himself think over the pounding of his heart, the growling sound returning, deeper now, reverberating against the walls. He reached for the door, desperation pushing him onward, but Sarah's grip tightened on his wrist. "Don't. You can't go out there again." The growl morphed into something else, something far more sinister. It wasn't just the woods anymore. It felt as though the very cabin was alive, closing in on them. Shadows danced across the walls, stretching and contorting beyond reason. Then came the thud, incredible pressure against the cabin door, rattling the frame, and knocking the family to the ground. Splinters flew as the door began to buckle. "Get to the back!" Jim shouted, scrambling for Emily and Ben, intent on steering them away from the impending terror. Could they escape whatever was out there? When he looked back at Sarah, she was staring wide-eyed at the shadows swirling closer, her mouth moving as if trying to say something, but no words came out. Suddenly, a scream split through the night, decimating the silence, a scream resonating from just outside the door. Would it claim them next, as they huddled together? The unmistakable sound of footsteps approached, slow and deliberate, just beyond the threshold. Would the shadows finally break through, or would they find a way to survive? But as Jim dared to peer outside, he was met with a sight that made him wish he hadn't looked at all. His eyes widened as he took in what was just beyond the door. It wasn't a furry beast or a thing of nightmares, but a figure cloaked in shadows, its features obscured, an entity suspended between the realms of flesh and darkness. Jim felt a chill creep down his spine. There was something repulsive about its presence, something that suggested more than just malice. It felt like an echo of despair. "Jim! Close it!" Sarah hissed, something primal in her tone, yanking at his shirt. Heart in his throat, he stumbled back, the door shaking under the weight of the unseen force outside. Every instinct screamed at him to slam it shut, to wedge the heavy table against it, yet a sickening compulsion rooted him in place. The figure shifted, and the air grew denser with despair. Jim's lungs felt constricted as the creature took a step forward, revealing a glint of something sharp and elongated in the dimness, a bone or an ancient tool of torment. He couldn't tell. Emily's whimper broke the eerie tension. "Daddy, please. Stay behind me," he whispered, instinctually shielding her as he turned to Sarah and Ben, who were paralyzed by fear. The shadows writhed at the edges of his vision like living things, beckoning him to look back outside, as if they held the secrets of countless lost souls. But there was no time for hesitations when the growling transformed into grotesque and distorted laughter. It wrapped around their minds, embedding itself in Sarah's terrified expression, twisting her disbelief into something more tangible. "Who's out there?" Jim finally shouted, his voice trembling with bravado. "What do you want?" The laughter ceased, replaced by a low hissing voice that echoed around them like slithering serpents. "You've come to the wrong place, Jim. You can't escape what's already bound to you." Bound to him? Those words ignited a spark of dread. Had they been drawn here for a reason? What did this creature know that they didn't? Sweat trickled down his brow, blurring the line between the known and the unimaginable. "Shut up!" Ben shouted defiantly, the remnants of a child's innocence clashing against the old specter of terror. It made Jim proud and terrified all at once. "Children should be seen and not heard," the figure hissed, voice slithering through the gaps in the wood. The sound sent Jim's heart into a frenzy. "Come play with us." Another thud against the door jolted them back to reality. It was gaining strength, each impact vibrating through Jim's chest like a drumbeat of doom. The walls seemed to pulse in sympathy, joining in the dance of impending horror. In a surge of primal fear, Jim lunged to the door, frantically pushing against it. Thunder rolled outside, mirroring his heartbeat, as he shouted, "We need to get out now." Sarah's eyes met his, igniting a shared resolve, a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. They ran towards the back of the cabin, breathless and frantic, legs nearly giving out under the weight of terror. The bathroom. The only window. Yet as they burst into the cramped space, reality twisted yet again. The only escape led to a mirror reflecting not just their terrified faces but also the shadow lurking behind them in the glass. A sharp grin stretched across its featureless face. "Where do you think you are going?" came the voice, just a whisper away from their ears. A sudden crash shook the cabin again, the door splintering away from its hinges, revealing that the darkness had finally breached their sanctuary. As the insanity encroached, Jim gripped the kid's shoulders, knuckles white. Panic surged, the smell of dampness mixing with despair as he screamed at Sarah, "Push the dresser. Block the door." But even as they rushed to obey, the shadows loomed larger, stretching toward them with sinister intent. Suddenly, a glimpse of clarity sparked in Jim's mind. He wasn't just running from something, he was running into the depths of something he could still understand. "Follow my lead," he yelled, pushing open the bathroom window. "We can climb out." As the first of them dove through, the growling morphed back into laughter, drowning their screams. Would they escape this nightmare, or had their lives just taken a turn into darkness? And as they made their escape, the whispers in the wind carried a new message, one that entwined their fates deeper than they could imagine. "It's only just begun and we will be waiting." What did that even mean? And as Jim felt the icy breath of the woods envelop them, he couldn't shake the feeling that maybe this was only the beginning of something far worse than he could ever dream. The cool night air wrapped around them like a shroud as they stumbled into the darkness of the woods, leaving the cabin behind. The stark contrast of the open sky above, free from the oppressive weight of the entity inside, felt almost euphoric, yet that euphoria quickly faded to a wretched sense of vulnerability. "Run!" Jim shouted, his breath coming out in short, desperate gasps. Emily clutched his hand tighter, and he felt her tiny fingers trembling. Every rustle of leaves sent fresh waves of terror washing over him. The shadows didn't just belong to the forest anymore, They were creeping into his mind, mingling with the fear that echoed from the cabin. Behind them, a cacophony of sounds erupted, a mixture of laughter that resonated deep in his chest and the unmistakable crashing of furniture being displaced. It was as if the very thing they had fled was now tearing the world apart just to pursue them. "Where do we go?" Sarah's voice trembled, laced with panic. Her eyes darted back towards the cabin, as if expecting the shadow to leap into view. "Just keep going," Jim urged, looking around for something, anything that could hide them from the impending doom. They sprinted farther into the woods, branches snapping beneath their hurried feet, the ground uneven and treacherous. Another glance back confirmed what he feared. A dark cloud seemed to billow out from the cabin, threading its way through the trees like a predator stalking its prey. A part of him knew it could never catch them out here, and yet the guttural laughter returned, blending with the distant thunder, a sinister promise that they were far from safe. Suddenly, Ben stopped, eyes wide with terror. "Daddy, I can't see." The darkness enveloped them, swallowing all light. Jim felt bile rising in his throat as he struggled to comfort his son. "It's okay, buddy. Just hold my hand." But he could feel the evening's heavy grip closing around them, trying to snatch them into a bottomless void. Just then, the wind picked up, sending a chill through his bones. Whispers danced around them, voices rising from the shadows, taunting, beckoning. "You've brought them to us, Jim. You should have stayed shut up," he yelled, desperation fueling his anger. But the shadows just laughed, echoing louder now, wrapping around them, a symphony of despair. Emily squeezed his hand harder. Her small face was pale, her eyes shimmering with tears. "Daddy, I'm scared, I know, sweetheart, just stay close," he whispered, even as his own dread ballooned. He wished he could protect them from this darkness, but what if it was rooted deep within him? The thought twisted his stomach. They hurried down a narrow path, guided only by instinct. Then, ahead, Jim spotted something, a flicker of light bouncing between the trees. Was it a hint of salvation or another cruel trick? "Over there." He pointed. The light pulsed beckoningly, brighter with every step they took. It carved a hole into the eternal dark. But as they dashed toward it, the laughter intensified, swirling around them like a storm. The light flickered again, revealing the outline of an old, dilapidated cabin, a twin of the one they had fled. The dread twisted fiercely in his gut as he felt the familiar weight of despair creep over him again. "Don't. It's a trap," Sarah screamed, yanking Jim back just in time. "We can't go in." And there, at the edge of the light, he saw a figure. It was cloaked again, just like before, the edges of its shadow shifting and mingling with the trees. Jim's heart raced. The figure tilted its head, and through the flickering shadows, he could almost make out its wide smile, a ravenous smile. "They are waiting for you, Jim," it whispered, the sound slithering between them. Realization hit like cold steel. This wasn't over. They hadn't escaped, they had just walked deeper into it. The woods swallowed their breaths as they huddled together, the darkness now more tangible, every inch of their skin crawling with goosebumps. As the figure took a step forward, the world ebbed out of focus, the sickening laughter harmonizing with the pulse of the forest. "Join us, it's time for your reckoning, and we'll be waiting." What did that mean? Where would they run now? The figure extended a hand, shadows leaking from the tips of its fingers, and Jim's heart sank as he felt the pull. "Run!" He screamed again, but it was almost too late. The very ground beneath them began to shift, leaving them to wonder if they were really running toward freedom or straight into an even darker fate. The air felt thick and suffocating as Jim yanked his family away from the cabin's facade. They stumbled deeper into the woods, feet pounding against uneven terrain, panic clawing at their throats. Shadows twisted around their legs, almost like a live tendril searching for a way to pull them back. "Keep moving," Jim shouted, urgency dripping from his voice. Ben clung to his pant leg, tears streaming down his cheeks, each sob breaking Jim's heart a little more. But they did not have time to rest. Not now. Closer, the ominous laughter reverberated through the trees, a cruel echo that bounced off the bark and wrapped around their minds. It was a song woven from despair, a melody that curled into their thoughts, whispering doubts, stirring fears. They'll never escape. Join us. Don't listen to it. Just keep going. Jim gasped, pushing through branches that clawed at their clothes. Emily's whispers merged with the rustling leaves, her soft voice laced with dread. Daddy, are we going to die? An icy shiver crept up Jim's spine. He looked at his daughter, that bright, innocent face now shadowed with fear. No. We're going to make it. I swear. And still, the shadows shifted. Something was moving behind them, slithering on the forest floor. This was no longer the serene woodland they once knew. It had turned into a nightmare's cape, full of treachery and dread. Then, just as they turned a corner in the thick brush, they halted. Breath caught in their throats. A figure stood before them in the dim light, only glimpsed through the gaps in the trees. Cloaked, with a wider brim that dipped low like a dark crown. Jim's heart raced as the figure unhurriedly stepped forward, their movements smooth and calculated. You cannot run from it, Jim, it drawled, voice laced with malice. It's in you. It always was. The palpable fear gripped Jim's chest, pulling tight. He shook his head violently, denying the truth that the specter was laying bare. No. You're wrong. But the figure's laughter rolled like thunder, rising above the trees and wrapping around him like a vice. Everything inside him began to spiral. Was it true? Did they actually carry this darkness within them? 6 forbidden secrets lie buried in your hearts, the figure said, a twisted grin forming on its shadowy face. And they will call to us unless you confront them. What are you talking about? Sarah whispered, backing away slowly as dread wrestled with comprehension. But the figure only pointed behind them now, an invitation to witness the shadows that danced like specters in the night. With shaky breaths, they turned, and panic erupted anew as more cloaked figures emerged from the darkness, each embodying the torment that had haunted them. Join us, they sang in haunting harmony. Face your fears. We'll show you. The ground quaked again, dragging their feet deeper into the shadows, binding them in place. Jim felt his eyes widen as he recognized each figure, faces of loved ones lost, each a narrative threaded through their lives. These were not mere monsters, they were memories, regrets made flesh. No, please. Jim's voice cried out in a desperate plea. His family was frozen beside him, trapped in the dissonance between flight and realization. Face what you've hidden. Only then can you hope for escape. The figures began inching closer, reaching out with fingers that dripped shadows, eager to pull them into the unknown. What do we do? Emily whimpered, clutching her brother tightly. In the distance, the cabin loomed like a gaping mouth waiting to devour them once more. Was this truly their only option now? To confront the darkness they had always feared? As the edges of Jim's vision blurred, the choices ahead loomed over them, dark and tumultuous. He could feel the weight of their past bearing down, each secret a chain looped around them. With terror coursing through his veins, he took a step back, and the laughter erupted again, louder, more menacing. Join us, Jim. Or be forever lost. Was this the end of everything? Could they escape the web of terror closing in? All hope glanced fleetingly like the flicker of flame in a full wind. As he weighed his options, time itself felt like it was unraveling, and Jim knew that whatever came next would demand a reckoning none of them were prepared for. The darkness bulged against the night, threatening to swallow them whole. In that moment of agonizing clarity, Jim realized they were trapped not just by something outside them but by the very fears inside. And then, through the rippling shadows, a piercing voice broke the silence, a sound so familiar it clawed at his heart. If you want your family to survive, you must make a choice. What choice? What kind of choice would demand such a price? The woods shuddered, and Jim felt the shadows closing in faster than ever. What was waiting for him in the flickering darkness? The figures continued to close in, their shadows stretching, twisting like smoke in the dim light. The air thickened, heavy with anguish and despair. Jim could feel Emily's grip tightening around Ben, her breathing quickening. He would do anything to protect them, but the eyes of the deceased bore into him, their silent judgments a palpable weight pressing against his chest. "Jim, we can't ignore them," Sarah murmured, her voice trembling as the specters loomed. "They're part of us now." "No. No!" Jim shouted, trying to shake the suffocating feeling of helplessness. "We can push them away. We can find a way out." He was desperately trying to convince himself as much as her. But instinctively, he knew this confrontation couldn't be avoided. A figure, draped in darkness, stepped closer until it stood directly in front of him. It was his father, eyes hollow, face twisted in sorrow. "Jim, you've let us down. You must confront your failures if you wish for them to let you go," it said, voice rasping like rusted metal. "Stop!" Jim cried out, hands clenching into fists at his sides. Each word from the figure felt like a dagger, words he'd buried deep, locked away in the corners of his mind. "You're not real. You're just a trick." "And yet here we are, Jim," another figure chimed in, the voice of an old friend who had drifted away from him years ago. "You had the chance to make things right. You chose wrong every time." Each choice Jim had avoided now came crashing back, a tide of regret seeking to drown him. The laughter erupted again, echoing through the trees as if nature itself was mocking them. "Make your choice, Jim." The cloaked figures raised their hands, and from the depths of the shadows, visions flashed like strobe lights. Emily's startled face, the joy of a birthday party, grimaced into pain, Ben learning to ride a bike, his fall transforming into a bloody scrape. Each moment twisted as if showing him a future plagued with unrelenting despair. "Stop it!" he shouted, desperate to block out the memories. But they wrapped around him like vines, squeezing tighter, cutting deeper. The past was clawing at him, begging to consume him whole. "Jim, I need you." Emily's voice broke through, high and panic-stricken. Fear tumbled through him. He turned, eyes wild, locking with hers, the shock in her eyes mirroring his own. In that moment, something in him cracked. "I want to let you take them. You want to take my family." The words tumbled out, a fierce declaration against the shadows that swarmed around them. "Yes!" Sarah shouted, her hand gripping Jim's tightly. "We can fight. Together." With a sudden surge of determination, Jim concentrated, not on the horrors before him, but on the love he had for Emily and Ben. "Face what you've hidden, face it." The voice of his father echoed, but this time it sounded almost fearful, vulnerable. The shadows shook in response, flickering as a gust of wind swept through the trees. The intense pressure around them lifted slightly, as if they were pulling back, testing the family's resolve. "Let them face us," another figure hissed, "or let them fall." "What will it be?" Fear gnawed at his insides, but a flame ignited within. An emboldened sense of purpose crackled in the electric air. "We do face this. Together." As Jim's voice rose, it pierced through the laughter, filling the night's emptiness. The shadows lurched and flickered, like candles losing their flame, desperate to feed on self-doubt. Maybe fighting was the only way to reclaim their voices and destinies. "Speak the truths buried in your hearts. Face your secrets." The specters screamed, their voices twisting into a horrific chorale. But what if revealing them meant doom? What if confronting their secrets led them deeper into darkness? "Jim, help!" Emily's voice threatened to break as the specters resumed their advance, fingers reaching out towards her, her bright light dimming in their presence. In that heartbeat, the ultimate question emerged: were they prepared to lay bare their darkest truths for even a chance of survival? The woods trembled at the crossroads of fear and revelation. Jim took a shaky breath, his heart in chaos. What do we do?" he gasped, desperate and lost. And then he felt it, a chilling whisper curling around his ears, seductive and terrifying. Every truth reveals a new shadow, Jim. What dark secret awaited them in the heart of their panic? Would confronting their past bring rise to their salvation, or was this merely the beginning of an insatiable nightmare? The shadows surged. Each wisp of darkness twisted, eager to sink their fingers into the vulnerability Jim was so terrified to lay bare. Beneath the weight of unseen eyes, Jim felt the panic clawing at his throat. Emily's soft sobs echoed, a haunting melody that deepened his despair. "Jim, please." Her voice cracked, and he could see her beginning to tremble as the spectral figures filled the space around them. "Stay strong, Em. We'll get through this," he yelled, though he could barely recognize the confidence in his own words. With every heartbeat, the weight of the past pressed harder. The specters hungered for the truth, and each truth felt like stepping closer to a precipice. "Face it, Jim," came a voice, shadowy yet familiar. It sliced through the chaos. His mother's face materialized among the throng. Her lips curled into an eerie smile, and her eyes were void of warmth. "You've caged your demons long enough." "No!" he screamed. "You're not real." He wanted to claw at her apparition, to dispel every memory that haunted him. "Jim," she whispered, sans emotion. "You can't escape this. We are here to help you, release you." His throat went dry. "Help?" The words rattled like a brittle branch in a storm. He could see their faces, every decision, every misstep, playing like a film reel in his mind. Regret stretched, bending time and space between them. With a snap, the laughter morphed into screams, a torrent that burst from the shadows. "Tell us. What do you fear?" they shrieked, the cacophony crashing over him like waves with sharp, cutting edges. "Tell us." The chorus rose, threatening to drown out the flicker of hope left in his heart. As their voices crescendoed, Jim felt a force tugging at him, almost pleading. "Everything," he gasped, straining against the pressure. "It's all my fault." The admission erupted from him, raw and savage. Emily stepped forward, her face shaking yet resolute. "No. This isn't you, Jim." She reached for him, fingers hovering hesitantly as if time were an elastic band ready to snap. "You don't have to bear this alone." But the shadows swirled, growing vicious with every word of self-loathing he uttered. "I let my father down. I ruined friendships. I fear failing you both." Each confession cut through the heavy atmosphere like glass shattering, intense and painful. The specters fell silent, their forms blurring as they absorbed the weight of his truth. The air thickened around them, and Jim could taste the fear clinging to his tongue, metallic and bitter. "They knew," Sarah whispered, clutching Ben tightly. "They always knew." The wordless figures shifted again, drawing closer, the unblinking eyes of accusation burning into every secret, every flaw that Jim dared not admit. "Confront those shadows, or let them bleed you dry," his mother's apparition pressed. "You've lived in their shadow long enough." Each word reverberated through his bones, demanding action. A flicker of defiance ignited in Jim. "Face me," he bellowed, his voice slicing through the submerged darkness. "I'm not afraid of you." But the shadows only laughed mockingly. "Fear swells with truth," they whispered in unison. Shadows danced around him, wrapping tight around his limbs, squeezing out breath. Jim could feel the suffocation creeping back. "Emily! Ben! Step back!" he shouted, forcing the words through gritted teeth. As the darkness shifted, the air seemed to pulse with tension. Would his proclamation hold? With every heartbeat that echoed around them, the threat in the darkness felt more alive, more dangerous. "Confront them or fall forever," echoed his father's voice, now a twisted harmony with the shadows. "That's right, Jim." The voice slithered like a serpent, seductive and cold. "Tell us everything." A violent shiver raced down Jim's spine. He knew it would take more than just bravery to survive this. Would he truly dare to face the horrors lurking within? As the woods began to close in, it felt as if the very fabric of reality warred against them. "Are you ready to meet your truth?" The dark figures hissed with anticipation, their hands inching closer, more menacing. His heart thundered in protest, yet he found himself taking a shaky step forward. "I'm ready," but just as he braced for the storm, a blinding flash surged through the night like a lightning strike. What lay within its light? What chaos would follow? The darkness recoiled, and Jim could only hope that what awaited him wasn't more than he could bear. Would his truth lead him to freedom, or would it shatter him completely? The blinding light engulfed Jim, a suffocating brilliance that pushed back against the shadows. He squinted, bracing himself, half expecting the figures to dissolve into smoke. But they held firm, still looming like a dark tide about to crash. The light pulsated, revealing new details. Jim caught fleeting glimpses of the specters, each face a twisted reflection of his own history, memories swirling like autumn leaves caught in a whirlwind. He could hear their whispered accusations cutting through the illumination, chipping away at the fragile shield. "Is this who you really are, Jim?" taunted a figure shaped like a childhood friend, their eyes glinting with betrayal. "Do you think you can escape us?" His heart raced, pounding against his rib cage. "I'm not running," he shouted back, the words trembling in the thick air. "I'm standing my ground." But the shadows circled closer, the air crackling with ominous energy. "You think light can save you?" a distorted voice crooned. "Truth is a weapon, Jim. One that cuts deeper than any blade." With every pulse of the light, Jim felt the weight of their truths press against him. He could hear Emily's voice fading, her earlier strength retreating into the corners of his mind. He needed to protect her, yet the confrontation loomed large. "Jim!" Emily's frantic plea sliced through the chaos. He turned just in time to see her being pulled back into the shadows, her terrified face a mirror of helplessness. "Fight for us!" she cried, the shadows clinging to her like vines seeking to snuff out her light. "No!" he yelled, desperation clawing at him. "I want to let you take her." Drawing on an unfamiliar strength, Jim held fast, allowing the light to radiate more fiercely. "You're nothing but fears I refuse to keep carrying," he declared, his voice growing stronger. "I refuse to let you dominate me." The shadows recoiled slightly, hesitating, and with that moment came a flicker of false hope. But then they surged forward, shrouding Emily further. The darkness roared, a chorus of cold laughter enveloping the air. "Fears run deeper than love," they taunted in unison. "You cannot protect those you love by denying the past." It was true. The past was a beast he tried to cage, and they knew it. The memories, guilt, anger, remorse flooded through him, each one a quick flash of anguish. He saw moments of neglect, isolation, pain, the night spent in self-doubt instead of reaching out to the very people he cared about. An icy dread seized him. "No more!" he bellowed into the throng, adrenaline pushing against his panic. "I'm stronger than what you make me feel." With a deep breath, Jim closed his eyes and envisioned the moments that forged him, the love he still had to give, the friendships that mattered most. They were bright flames against the looming shadows, flames that flickered with the warmth of truth. "Together, we move forward," came his steady voice, clear as he opened his eyes. A new pulse of light erupted from him, illuminating dark corners, forcing the shadows to retreat. The figures writhed in protest, their howls of rage cutting through the once oppressive silence. And even as Jim felt their cold breath on his neck, he pressed on. "You're just shadows. You can't hurt me anymore." But just as he thought victory was within grasp, a chilling wind swept through the clearing, snuffing out the light like a candle. The shadows pressed closer still, an inky wall of despair. "Your truth hasn't been uncovered yet, Jim," hissed his mother's figure, her voice now a whisper. Concealment breeds only torment in that moment, realization slammed into him. He wasn't just fighting shadows, he was finally standing up against everything he had buried deep within. "Face me!" he shouted against the roaring darkness, heart pounding, mind racing. "Tell me what you want from me." As the last echoes of his cry faded into the suffocating night, the shadows paused, curious, and Jim held his breath. Would they drown him in the abyss of his own making, or bring forth the truths he feared to confront? The chilling air thickened again with anticipation, and just as dread began to settle deep in his gut, a new figure emerged from the depths, one he never expected to see again. "Jim," it whispered, causing the darkness to shudder. Who was this specter? What new revelation lurked behind that familiar voice? The figure stepped forward, a silhouette materializing from the encroaching darkness. Jim's heart stopped. Shadows flickered around the newcomer as if hesitant to embrace the presence that had so long been buried. "Mom?" he finally whispered, voice hoarse. The form didn't change, but flickered like an old film reel caught between frames. A heart-wrenching resemblance rested in those hollow eyes, they carried both warmth and bone-chilling emptiness. "Yes, Jim," she spoke, the words anchored in sadness, as if every syllable cost her dearly. "I've been waiting." He clenched his fists, the flash of memories flooding him, the long nights he spent waiting for her return when he was a child, her laughter brightening the dimness. Yet it was the absence that cast the longest shadow. "Why are you here?" he managed, the sharp sting of anger surfacing with the grief. She stepped closer, the light around him flickering suspiciously, as if not trusting her presence. "To remind you," she said gently. "You have to confront the truth to reclaim your light." Jim shook his head. "No, you're not real." He felt panicked, face flushed and sweating. You left us." The shadows shifted, echoing his grief, morphing into the heartbreak he had tried to bury. "It's not just my absence that haunts you," she countered, her voice unwavering. "This pain is a part of you, Jim. You can't run anymore. You need to acknowledge me. Acknowledge what happened." "Why?" he roared, emotions spiraling out of control. "It only brings more pain." "Because the past isn't a monster, it's a mirror," she urged, gesturing frantically as if her words could shatter the darkness binding him. "To move forward, you must accept the pieces of yourself you've hidden away. You cannot have light in your life without addressing the shade it casts." Suddenly, the air grew colder, pressing against his skin, and the figures behind her whispered more maliciously, their eyes fixing on his every trembling motion. They were closing in, two-dimensional extensions of his once suppressed fears. Each face was a memory of sorrow and regret. "Come now, Jim. Let us remember." His mother's voice transformed, twisting into a cacophony of the shadows around them, mocking his hesitation. "What do you fear the most?" An icy dagger plunged into his gut. He saw flashes of her leaving filled with explosive anger, his futile attempts to reach out. Failures, missteps, conversations left unsaid, words unspoken. The memories clawed at him, dragging him deeper into despair. "No. I'm done with this." He stomped his foot, but the shadows surged around him, rooting him in place. What seemed like a grand unveiling quickly turned surreal. Frightening outlines of his past loomed closer, extending invisible tendrils that felt as real as the air he fought to fill his lungs with. A new voice joined her, a cool and cruel whisper, a distinct timbre from a moment long ago. "You've always run from yourself, boy. Just come back. It's so much easier to accept defeat, to spiral into despair. Stop," he cried, clutching his head as the pressure built, warmth mixing with the encroaching horror. He was standing at the edge of a chasm, ready to be devoured by the shadows. "I won't forget. Not now, not ever." He clung to the remnants of his fading light, but darkness roared like thunder around him, the twisted faces closing in tighter. "Face your truth, Jim." His mother's voice echoed, overlapping with the chilling laughter of the shadows. "Face the past or become consumed by it." As the shadows draped over him, Jim felt the weight of their darkness spinning an intricate web of memories and regrets. In that moment of reckoning, he realized this was not just a battle against them, it was a confrontation with himself. He took a deep breath. "I can't keep doing this." But as the words left his mouth, a new flicker of hope sparked inside him. "I want to fight. I will face whatever you are." The shadows reacted violently, shrieking like bats disturbed from slumber. They recoiled, readying for a counterattack. But then a realization struck him harder than the darkness. It was a truth he had never faced, a secret buried under layers of suffering, perhaps an even darker shadow that awaited him. "Show me," he breathed, trembling. "Show me everything," and as if to answer his plea, the darkness surged, a monstrous mid-scream, twisting into a labyrinth of his deepest fears. What awaited him in the darkness? Would he find the strength to confront the ghastly truth? As the shadows began to gather strength, Jim wondered if he could withstand their onslaught. Would confronting his past lead him to freedom, or doom him forever within the abyss? The darkness coiled around Jim, shadow-laden hands reaching out like serpents poised to strike. But for the first time, he didn't flinch. He took a deep breath, steadying himself against the storm of whispers threatening to drown him in despair. "Show me everything," he asserted, his voice unwavering, cutting through the suffocating weight of regret. A sudden shift rippled through the shadows, and just like that, images began to flood his mind. Flickers of memories both painful and precious danced before him, presenting a painful mosaic of his life, the love, the loss, the moments of laughter overshadowed by neglect. Faces he had buried long ago emerged, voices intertwining, formulating a cacophony of stories he had run from. There they were, his youth, filled with dreams, until the fractures appeared. "Look closer, Jim," a figure whispered, this one cloaked in familiarity. It was his mother, her face twisting between kindness and sorrow. "Every choice, every regret has led you here. Embrace them or be consumed." The memories surged, slicing through him like a cold blade. The moment he had yelled at her during a heated argument, the one he had long buried, echoed loudly in his mind. "You'll never understand," he had shouted, eyes filled with burgeoning rage. Now, he felt the regret swell, the rippling shame washing over him like a tide. "No more hiding," he chanted to himself, feeling every fiber of his being tremble. The shadows got closer, more insistent, their voices harmonizing in ghostly whispers. "You cannot escape. You cannot be free. Stop it." Jim yelled back, his voice rising above the torment. "You've haunted me long enough." Each confession became a hammer, striking the anvil of his reality. "I feared failure. I feared not being good enough. I feared love." With each shout, the shadows quivered, recalibrating with his rising defiance. The specters closed in closer, fear looking back at him from their sunken eyes. Yet a new light began to pulse within him, fueled by the quiet strength of his children, the unwavering love he felt for Sarah, and the desperate resolve to break the chains binding them. "Look at them." The shadows howled, their shapes warping in furious waves. "Look what they've become because of you." Memories swirled around Jim like a tempest. He saw Emily, vibrant and full of laughter just moments before, now dimmed by his fears, her own joy tangled in his moments of weakness. He felt his heart stopping, knowing he needed to shield her from his shortcomings, but instead of retreating, he pushed forward. "I will not let you consume them," he vowed, his voice jagged and raw. "I will not let my shadows decide our fate." The very ground trembled as he spoke, the echoes of his words solidifying into a force that pushed back the suffocating darkness. The shadows recoiled, momentarily diminished, as a golden light enveloped Jim, illuminating his memories with astonishing clarity. Every flicker of past suffering transformed into lessons learned, emboldened reflections of who he had become. "Let us in," they hissed, desperate to draw him back. "We'll always be a part of you." But Jim smiled, no longer afraid. "You're right," he said firmly. You are a part of me. But you hold no power over me. I will carry my truths while choosing to live in the light. As he declared this, the connection between him and the shadows shifted dramatically. Instead of clinging like shackles, they faded, morphing into soft spirals of fog, revealing the truths behind them. The figures began to lift away, whispering bittersweet acknowledgments of their intertwined pasts. I forgive you, Jim said quietly, eyes misty with emotion, the words breaking through like sunlight after the storm. I forgive myself for all the times I pushed you away. The delight of acceptance laced into his very being. Each word resonated, unraveling layers of anguish from his heart. The warmth of his family's love wrapped around him, forming a sanctuary against the onslaught of ancient regrets, but as he exhaled, light dancing like fireflies around him, he felt the gravitational pull of the shadows dimming even further. The laughter transformed, ebbing away into a breeze that felt strangely light. This isn't over, Jim, a faint voice beckoned, a reminder lingering in the air, but it was less threatening now, more a gentle Sisyphean challenge. He turned back, and there they stood, Emily, Ben, and Sarah, their presence strong as they gazed back, wide-eyed but now comforted by the light that permeated the once stifling darkness. No longer were they just victims of hidden fears, they had forged their bond anew, a tapestry woven from love, courage, and acceptance. Are you ready? Jim asked, kneeling beside them, the warmth of their hands clinging tightly to one another. The darkness still loomed, but it felt less ominous, a distant resonance echoing their shared history. They stood as a unified front, ready for whatever came next. The air itself began to transform, shimmering whispers of hope threaded through the fabric of their reality. Together, we can face anything, he reiterated, love igniting a shield against the lingering threat. With that resolve anchoring them, they took their first step away from shadows, a new dawn illuminating the path forward. As the last echoes of despair faded into the twilight, Jim spoke to the void, you'll never hold us again. And as the forest sighed in acceptance of their newfound strength, they heard its whisper resonating beyond the shadows, only by embracing your past will the future thrive. Jim led his family onward, heart light but mindful of the lessons learned, knowing they would revisit the spirits of their past, but they would do so with strength, compassion, and a fierce love to keep the darkness at bay. As they stepped into the light of a new day, the roots of their painful past began to intertwine with fresh hopes, paving the way for a brighter, fear-free future. Now that you've felt the chill, the intensity, and the journey of Jim and his family, you need to subscribe immediately to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will tug at your heart and keep you on the edge. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your love for this chilling tale. Flood the comments section below with your reactions and theories about the ending. What do you think is waiting in the shadows for our characters next? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this explosive conclusion. True fans know how essential it is to support the channel through these small yet mighty actions.